There you go. We'll look at Punarvasu. Oh, where are we here? Yeah, these ones that span 2 nakshatras, boy, they're tough, man. They're it's a lot to go through. I might have someone now to go like this. No, that's not the document. I might have someone now to help me get these things from where they are to books, to publisher. Oh, there's Ardra. Yeah. Where's my other Punarvasu? Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, here we go. Emmett made it.
Hello, hello.
Namaste, Emmett. You got here. You got here just in time, but yeah, thank you for the mic. Shut off. Perfect. So yeah, you just got here in time. Punarvasu is the nakshatra of the day. I remember doing the research for this, and all the actors that played Robin Hood had Punarvasu placements, even if you went back to the old ones. So there might be something to that. Then there was this, he was a philosophy teacher, one of these early guys that went to Japan and learned a bunch of Zen Buddhism and learned to shoot the bow. And so then he said the bow and Zen are one. So there's a lot of that bow and arrow type stuff. The deity is the great mother, Aditi, the womb of the universe, the one who sort of seeds the universe. And I think that's that power of renewal, kind of comes through the rebirth and bringing things up. And so these are great mothers. They're usually great mothers to everything, to everyone. So animals and dogs and anyone that needs a mother, anyone that's looking to grow. So that's really what she's doing, really helping feeding that growth, I guess you could say. Now, so she's the great womb of the universe. This is interesting, because I just did Mula Nakshatra not long ago. I was working on that one. And Mula is also a womb of the universe. And so it's interesting to see these two across from each other, the womb and the womb. Almost different kinds of wombs. So it's kind of something we can look at. Of course, the bow and the quiver of arrows, very direct, very goal orientated sort of people, like they're going one way. There's often this sense of returning to the light with Punarvasus. I remember you would see actually a lot of sort of addicts would have this sort of thing, but they always return to the good. Sort of born again Christian type people might have Punarvasus, or kind of born again. They return to the light. And so there's a period of their life that's usually quite dark. And then they kind of renew and come back again. You found these other kind of words that get associated, the Punarvasu, the punctual, the punitive, the puny, the pun, very punny sort of people, maybe, of like that. I can tell how close I am by Dana's reactions to what I say. She was telling me, Emmett wasn't here yet, but she was telling me she's got, is it Punarvasu Ascendant? Yeah, so anyway, so we got to put now we got that covered here. So you also see a lot of this sort of pairing, this twinning energy. There's a lot of that sort of that black and white. And even if you look at something like the sun in here, the kind of light they shine, if you look at their pictures, there's probably a lot of like darkness and light in the pictures. A lot of sort of black and white, a lot of sort of heavy shadows kind of thing. I remember seeing that with a lot of some of the movie stars that were doing this early, or in movies early, had sort of these placements. You can see all these sort of twin brothers, sisters sort of energies here. Aditya is the light. The Dittis are sort of the Ashuras in a sense, the darkness. Love, Kush. Can't remember who they are actually. I hope I've written about them below. But you get also from the Bible, Castor and Pollux, Romulus and Remus, all these sort of paired, the good brother, the bad brother, in a sense. And there's a lot of almost like this reconciliation, this return to the light. And it's when we're able to, philosophically, when we're able to blend our dark and our lightness together, in a sense. There's a lot of that. Well, they say the symbol is the house and the home. You actually see, well, I think that is the carryover into the Cancer side, is some of that house and home, but you also see a lot of like carpenters and people like that that are actively sort of building a house, building homes, building walls, sheltering people as well. That's like the great Aditya, the mother, provides shelter to all of her children in a sense. And so you get people that are involved with that. Could be involved with like guest houses and renting out, like providing shelter to people in all the different ways we do that. The classics tell us that it rules over people that are honest and truthful. Just below, we'll get into the Saturn part of that, but in a sense, you could say Saturn crosses Punarvasu, and that's sort of truth and honesty. Those people have trouble. They're usually very generous, pure, clean, high-born people. So again, Saturn will affect the high-born when he transits through this. Intelligent, famous, rich, best of grains, all of that sort of thing. There's that artisans and merchants. And this is some part of Cancer that we forget about to a certain degree, because Cancer is kind of well, it can be agriculture and this kind of thing, but there's another side to Cancer where they're making things from those agricultural products. They're the artisans, kind of basket weaving and different things like this. One thing I'll mention here, so I put this thing in about like Saturn transits Punarvasu, the people of Punjab, Saurashtra, Sindh, Soriva. These all people are kind of harmed. And I haven't been able to do this for all the nakshatras yet, but I looked up some of these towns, and you sort of see the history of these places, and you can see what I obviously haven't done it for this one yet. But you can see, you learn a lot of the energy of Punarvasu. Like look into the history of Sindh and what the people of Sindh were known for example, even how their history went, like how that town maybe rose and fell. And you'll see a lot of things probably connected with Punarvasu when you look these things up. Now, I feel like that's part of this course, is to give you guys also some research to do. This is such a tiny foundation of research that I've got here. It's this huge thing, but it's really a foundation. There's so much more to do on this yet. And really, like I learned from it because I did the research where I've done the research. And so that's really where you guys will learn, is to pick up from this and work on top of that and do your own research and work from it. You get little things here. So it's a very creative energy. Of course, Punarvasu is going to be creative. It's dealing with like growth and raising people up and sheltering kind of the weak, sheltering the poor, sheltering the children, you could say. Sage Kratu is ruling over this. Aditi, well, they say the mother of the universe, but she's the mother of the 12 Adityas in a sense. So the 12 sun gods. And I've got the Adityas in my songbook. You'll see I go through all the Aditya mantras there, the sun mantras, I might have called it. Anyways, there'll be 12 of them. So you get that. And so this sun and this power of this sun is inspiration, is a very big part of that sun energy, that light that shines, that Aditya that brings people up and inspires them. And so it's a big part of what Punarvasus have to do, is inspire people. That's kind of like, if we go more basic Punarvasu stuff, give someone a goal, give someone something to achieve, and you kind of inspire them. It's like, yeah, I can go and I can get that. I can do that. There, now I have some direction, in a sense. And so it's kind of funny in a way, if you think of something like Sagittarius being the compass, Punarvasu might be the needle of that compass that's actually sending a person in that direction. So this kind of thing. It's funny here, Sage Ketu had these like 60,000 children that were the size of the thumb, these little tiny children. I think this sort of relates somewhat with like animals, but especially insects, right? Those really tiny little, and you've got like 60,000 ants there in a sense. And so in a way, they're kind of the mother of all life, even those little ants. I don't know. Do you kill spiders and ants, Dana? Or are you like, do you kill spiders and ants and little?
I try to not kill anything, but I have to admit I kill mosquitoes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
ants have always followed me all my life everywhere, and it's a thing that I didn't find a correlation until right now.
There you go. There you go. You're the ant mama, like the mama duckling with your ants.
Yeah.
So, so, so you see, there's things to this, and in subtle ways, these sages. The second life, he became an unmarried sannyas, adopted only one child. He found one really good student and adopted that student and that child. And Agastya is quite important here. I should actually research Agastya as well, because there'll be find a lot on him. And well, he's part of the lineage of Sage Ketu, so he should also be looked into. The Deva Nakshatra, so they try to be kind of above everyone. You could say they really try to work hard to do the right thing, and they can do the right thing. They're very sort of godly people. Vaishyas, merchant caste, so very good at sales and doing transactions, maybe being a middleman, sort of a person, working with their networks, all of that thing. You can see here though, often from the educated class, so giving lectures, teaching, advising, a lot of these sorts of service, sort of Vaishya, servant, merchant, but they're kind of offering services, but higher end services, right? Not so much like the Shudras. Very comfortable in that teacher-student, superior-subordinate sort of relationship. This also helps them work with animals, like good animal trainers and things like this usually come through Punarvasu. Through sometimes connection with horses, certainly like dog trainers, but animal trainers generally. And that's that like superior subordinate relationship. So they're kind of moving knowledge around and things like that. Artha, they're motivated by money. And so if they want to accumulate things. And so sometimes if they find this a lot of times, if they kind of maybe don't need any money, they might not find that motivation. But if they feel like they need to make a bit of money or they need to kind of get something, then they're motivated. This is part of the creation too. They want to raise these children up and make them better, make them improve people in a sense. And so kind of increase the value of things. That's sort of Artha perspective as well. Very movable, very changeable in what they do and how they feel. A little bit passive, and so they don't really force things. They kind of let things happen a little bit more to a certain degree. very sattvic, and so it's like they're deva people, godly people, but also very sattvic, instruments of the divine, in a sense, really. And so they're really going for that sense of purity. We find it's a wet, watery sort of nakshatra. I think that goes well with the movement of Punarvasu. And fluid, there was the other one, yeah, the movable, ephemeral, and so they're kind of good for moving and traveling and getting around, and that water is always sort of looking for that calm. Water people like to have some boundaries to a certain degree as well. And that would help, like to be goal directed, you have to have boundaries. Interesting that it's a watery sign, but Vata. I always find these sort of contradictions, the contradictions come up. It's always the most sort of interesting part of it. But I think that's that movement of Punarvasu, the arrow flying through the air in a sense. And so it might be that they pick up a lot of their Vata from outside, maybe the moon becomes very sensitive. And so they also get sort of windy from the movement side of their own self. That sort of thing. And here we find this other contradiction. This is something I've always kind of tried to work with, is that it's a passive nakshatra, but it's masculine. And usually one of the first qualities you think of the masculine is that it's active. It's not a passive energy. But still, there becomes this sort of masculinized energy to this nakshatra, and somehow, usually what they say is like, if your fifth lord is in Punarvasu, you're more likely to have male children. There's often how this sort of gets used, or your sixth house is in Punarvasu, you're more likely to have male servants, or male pets even, you could say. So that kind of thing often comes through. Now they face straight. Did you have something, Emmett?
Yeah, my best friend's actually Punarvasu son, and he's a teacher, and he's got a male cat, and he's all about like teaching the kids and teaching his cat how to always be better and have a better quality of life. So this is spot on.
Yeah, so that's Punarvasu. His son there, that's really how he would express himself. He'd be probably a little intense for some people, actually, because so focused, one-pointed kind of concentration, probably very good.
He's got a Pisces ascending, so that helps soften him up a lot to bring that intensity down. But like when he's with me, I've got an intensity, so when him and I are together, we go intense and hard. But around other people, he's got this more this Pisces up in the air kind of
easy
thing.
going. Yeah,
Yeah,
nice sort of mix then.
yeah. My best friend for a reason.
Cool. So yeah, it's kind of neat how these things go. The facing straight ahead level, that's a lot. I see this levelness come in like a lot in my own chart. It's like, I used to do this water and sewer construction. I always worked with a level, like a literal level, and the surveyor's level, and it was all about level, and we called it grade, but there was we were really watching what sort of level it was on. But there's another sense, like these sort of metaphors, like they'll really level with you kind of thing, and that directness, that way. I think that goal directed as well. And so these people are they're looking straight ahead of them. They're looking into the future in a sense. They're looking at what's coming up. And so they can be very well coordinated. I think they talk about like gymnasts and wrestlers often have Punarvasu. And so they're usually very strong and good coordination. Like that Mercury is kind of gives coordination to a sense. So that's sort of some of that Gemini stuff that comes in. But certainly Punarvasus are very strong and very well coordinated. And that's part of that like hand-eye coordination. You're looking what's coming. You're ready to jump around that, move around that, and dodge that, and duck that. And so they're really ready for what's coming up in the future, quite literally. So good for astrologers. So it's kind of like, if you're going to be an astrologer, all your planets kind of have to point there, and some, like, there's that energy where you want to see what's coming up. Okay, there's that, and then another planet will give you, you want to know what's going on maybe, and so you start digging into things with the other energy. And so one period after another, you're kind of following astrology in different ways. So this is the female cat. It pairs with a Shlesha. I don't know if we know much about like cats' mating behaviors, but that's like, they're really loud and annoying. And they can be very intense when they're in heat. This kind of thing, very aggressive. Like when they're in heat, they just go for it. You don't see it so much anymore, but like there used to be this trope a little bit when I was younger, the cat in heat, and at nighttime keeping everybody awake, and you throw the shoe at it. There was, what was that? Oh, it was that crazy cartoon, Felix, and that crazy cat cartoon from like the 60s. You know, the one, and there was like the prostitutes in it, and everybody was smoking dope, and it was really groovy, like just totally groovy sort of thing. So that's kind of, that really, everybody's seen that show, but so that's really a lot to do with this female cat energy. Like this. And we can kind of, like, you talk about like how much they ovulate and those sort of cycles, and we'll see that also these people, their own sexual cycles will kind of follow that to a certain degree. Interesting things, like the cat's able to see in the dark. And so I would expect like that sort of cat energy comes into people in every which way. So I also expect that really good sight in the dark. Again, it relates a little bit to astrology. What's in the shadows? What's hidden? What's in the darkness? And Aditya is kind of lights up the darkness. It's quite literally what she does, like return, become good again. And so we can see that through the cat energy. Cats are often also related with a lot of black magic as well. And so you get that side in that night. They're kind of lighting up. What is this black magic? How do you use it? It's interesting that I put in quotes there along with the owl. I was in Varanasi, a good friend of mine, he found this owl. It had its wings cut off. And so it was just kind of hopping around. I see the pain in Dana's face on that. So this owl was just kind of hopping around. And so he fed it and brought it some water and sort of took care of it a little bit. And it just followed him around everywhere, like the ants in a way. This little owl kept following. Not sure. I'll look at his chart and see if he has Punarvasu. But everyone, all the Babas, and this is in Varanasi, so there's gurus everywhere. Everybody knows about black magic there. And everybody told him the same thing. Like, this owl is associated with black magic. And actually by keeping it alive, you feel good about yourself, but you prolong the black magic on the person it was done to. For as long as this owl sort of survives, they're getting hit with this black magic. You've got to get rid of this thing. Like, you can't keep taking care of it. I sort of said the same thing intuitively as well. I'm like, this isn't good. Like, you shouldn't be taking care of this owl, man. This is a bad omen. And then his own life, like right after he got rid of it, he went downhill for a while. Like, he had suffered a lot of problems after that owl. So very strange. And this is Varanasi, so you get the strange things. Devi Sashti, she rides on the cat. There's this, where the heck was she from? Maybe she was Russian or Ukrainian woman living in Varanasi. And she was like the cat lady, like taking care of all the cats. She had a little cat in her box that she traveled with everywhere and had on the leash. And she had, I think it was Punarvasu planets, but I remember she had like Devi Sashti was involved. It might have been she was a Shlesha. But Devi Sashti was very much involved in her life. Again, she's this motherly figure, taking care of the cats. And I got the story here. You can read the story. It's kind of a neat little story with her. But I'll let you kind of read that on the own. Bamboo is the tree of this, and of course, yeah. Go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, just before we go too far, I was wondering about the owl and the cat, how these animals are also typically depicted as like spiritual protection animals.
Okay.
So is it kind of like because like Buddhist temples or yeah, Buddhist temples in Tibet all have a cat to kind of protect from rodents and things like that. And I think every witch would also have a cat to protect from
Yeah.
other black
Yeah.
magic. So I'm wondering, like when it comes to the owl as an example, where like a cat is self-sufficient, hunts itself, and an owl is supposed to do the same thing. So I wonder if like if we take care of a black cat or if we take care of an owl, then we would get bad karma. But if we let them roam and take care of us, then that's when it protects us. Is that
Yeah.
something that kind of makes sense, or how
That
you?
actually, that does make sense to me. It's like the cats. We've never really domesticated cats fully, right? They're always like, fuck off. Right? They're really rude animals like that. Really, they are. Um, so yeah, I could totally see this. I remember when I got a cat years ago, I was in college years ago, and as soon as I picked him up from the SPCA, I looked at him. He was kind of the wildest cat in there. So I picked him. It's like you put your finger and he was the one that just jumped on my finger. And I was like, yeah, we're gonna be friends. But I told him right away, I said, I'm never going to domesticate you. You're just going to stay wild. I'm not going to try to train you. You, I'll feed you. You can live in my house. We'll be friends. And we were really good friends, but he was an amazing guard cat because nobody could go near him. I had a friend coming to my house to feed him one time, and he's like, no, I just actually, to be honest, I didn't go in this week. I opened the door. He was on the kitchen table hissing like this big black cat too. He was hissing. I just closed the door, like, because to get in, you had to go like right beside the kitchen table to get through that door. And he was just like, I wasn't doing it. That's on him. I was like, yeah, that's on him. Um, so yeah, he was a wild cat. And then actually, when I was younger, the cats that we had, we caught some wild cats, some feral cats, and sort of like we put them on a choke chain so they were tame enough to actually touch them. They weren't going completely wild. And then they became these really amazing, beautiful cats. He used to come hunting with us when we were kids, and he'd be like pulling birds and mice out of the forest and play with them for a while and like that. So anyways, there's my free cat stories. Yeah, I feel this way about animals too. I'm like, why do you want to put your dog on a chain? Why do you want to control him? Why do you want to be their boss? But Dana's like, I like that subordinate. I'm the boss here. So she probably had, you have dogs, don't you?
I have two very well behaved trained dogs by
Yeah.
me,
Yeah. So
by my partner.
the good animal trainer. And yeah, so she,
Yeah, but the thing is the breed we have, like the border collie and the English Staffy, they like to be intellectually that's their game,
yeah,
you know, so to like
yeah.
follow orders, but they are literally free. They own me actually.
Yeah,
I'm their
well,
slave.
of course, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and very well trained, like she said. So the animal trainer, yeah, we could like that. And so these people have the qualities of the bamboo. They grow fast. They go from nothing to boom very quickly, very strong, straight, like straight talking, like level with you. They're not going to meander through the meadow. They're just going to find their straight line and kind of follow that to a certain degree. Um, they're used for holding others up. You can get like they use them as scaffolding and all this in India and all these poor countries. Um, Interesting point here. I don't know. They flower only once in their lifetime. I don't know if this is true also for the Punarvasus, but they might have that one great flowering in their life. Like that. Yeah, they say it's a grass, actually. It's not a tree. It's maybe like Swati, the grass blowing in the wind sort of idea comes into that. See, this is interesting, absorbing that high amounts of CO2 and emitting high levels of oxygen. And so what it's doing, it's actually becomes like one of the great or air purifiers. And so that's part of what Aditya is doing is purification from the dark to the light in a sense. And so that's exactly what this is doing with our oxygen, taking the O2 out like that. Yeah, kind of impervious to water and rotting and things like that as well. Kind of again, the more you go into and studying the bamboo, the more you're going to learn about the Punarvasu. Oh, there's this, it has that, yeah, that liquid that collects inside that water. And it's kind of a stimulant, cooling, used for beauty, good for the bones, connective tissues. And so in a way, we might think that Punarvasus might have some problems with this, with their hair, with their skin, the minerals in the body, the density of the bone, different things like that. I don't know why I put potash and potassium together, but the potassium is certainly involved with electrolytes, all of that sort of thing. And I'll just kind of skim through that, let you guys read that on your own, and we'll come into where are we? Oh, we got some Pushkara Amshas. Oh, two Pushkara Amshas here. Beginning of Cancer, yeah, okay, beginning Pada 2 and Pada 4. So again, we've got Aditya, talked about her.
What are Pushkaras again? Sorry.
Pushkara Padas are nourishing points. And I generally find that any planets that are in the 3 degrees of a Pushkara Pada, any planet usually gives nice results. Somehow that planet gets nourished. Like that. I think like, even if I think like Pushkar, the town of Pushkar in India is way out in the desert, but there's an oasis there. There's water there. So it's this nourishing place where you can kind of get nourished and refilled and refueled. And in a way, it doesn't surprise us that Aditya has 2 of these points in it, because that's what Aditya does, is nourish, help replenish, like kind of helps fill people up and they get their rest and they can kind of restock and then go on again. The personification of the boundless sky, free of all bonds. And so this, I mentioned earlier, I said, well, Swati is also a grass, and so there might be a connection there. But I would think certainly Swatis and Punarvasus would probably get along because of that sense of freedom, that sense of openness. And then there's that windiness, and they're both grasses. They're both, in a sense, the little guy, to a certain degree, right? They're grasses. They're not trees like the other one. Yeah, I talked about some of this light and shadow and the counterparts and kind of bringing them in. I mentioned something, the solar deities typically have a shadow projection, like the shadows of Plato's cave. And so they need to watch that to a certain degree, because they sort of do, when you're shining on everything, you're also casting these shadows. The 8 Vasus, again, these are kind of some of the main deities of the Vasudevas. Again, Durva, the pole star, water, just all the basic elements of earth, the basic elements of creation, you could say, are represented by the Vasus. And so it's kind of fire and wind and light, that opening and the space for it all to happen, the fertility, all of these kind of things. Again, there's some stories here about the Vasus, Kamadhenu. Oh yeah, there we go. More Kamadhenu stories. Kamadhenu's been a theme in the last few days. Oh yeah, and they were asked Kamadhenu. Yeah, that's the story where Ganga had the affair with one of the rishis. Yeah. So, and then Bhishma, he was the great archer of the Mahabharata, of course. He was, I think there's a picture of him. Yeah, there's a picture of him, the archer lying on his deathbed. And part of the arrows kept him, like, he never did touch the ground, was a part of that. And even in the story, to a certain point in the story, Yudhishthira never touched the ground because he was such an honest man. And then as the Mahabharata war was being carried out, he told a lie, Ashwamitra or something, somebody's son had the same name as Indra's elephant. And so it was kind of this white lie. He said, oh, Ashwamitra's dead. And that was it to make the father give up on the battle, sort of thing. But as soon as he said that little lie, his feet came down on the ground. I think it was the wheels of his chariot maybe came back to the ground as soon as he told the lie. And so I think Punarvasu is also trying to be very, very honest. And any little thing, they sort of feel the repercussion of that. There's like this immediate consequence to any sort of moral failings that a Punarvasu might have. And so they have to really be upright in a sense. Because all those little things they feel very quickly. And so I'm sure I wrote about that through here. A few other stories about Bhishma. Stories, the fisherman. Oh, wow, I got all kinds of stories there. But again, I'll let you read that. I'll try to get down to some charts here fairly soon. The bow and the quiver of arrows. And I was thinking when I was studying a lot of this, I was thinking a lot about like the ways energy moves and the way time moves with energy in a sense. And so here we get that bow, that elastic potential. And so I think Punarvasus are like this as well. It's like that sense of they fall back, they kind of, maybe even it becomes a laziness sometimes in their life, but they kind of recede into the background sometimes, recede into the shadows until they're ready. They've sort of built up their energy, they built up their power, and then they're like this elastic. They just come right back out again, right back into the light. Bing, here I am, I'm ready to go, sort of thing. And that's really the way the forces are moving with the bow and arrow. They kind of pull that back. You only pull it back 8 inches or something, but it makes that incredible force for the arrow going forward and just penetrates. I want to say the strongest armor, but that's not quite true either. But it can really penetrate quite deeply. So it's quite a powerful force. So again, just studying these forces of the symbols and things like this. Again, it's all about energy moving. All really is what all of these nakshatras are. How do they move? Oh, they move a little bit like a bamboo shoot. The energy moves like a bow and arrow. The energy moves like a cat, in a sense. Remember the story? There's this it's my cat story. Sometimes say like a cat in a funny way, and this is why I do it. There was this Italian man, old Italian man I met in the Narmada Valley in the middle part of India. And he'd been just like walking the Narmada for years, living in caves, living in simple shelters like this. And so I met him and spent a couple of weeks kind of talking to him. He says, yeah, so this one time, I think it was about 4 years before he'd just been back. No, it was less than that, maybe 2 years before he just got back to India. And he said, so I was living in Rishikesh. He says, I was full enlightened, Satchitananda, like a little baby. I didn't care for anything. I just fully let go. And people, he says, I was living in this ashram, and so the other students would kind of take me down to the river, and sort of help me bathe, and everything was provided. He's like, I just didn't care about anything. I was just in this bliss. It was this great time. And then my brother came from Italy. He was Italian man. So my brother came from Italy, and he sort of tricked me into going back to Italy with him. And as soon as I got back to Italy, my brother put me in a mental hospital. He committed me like this. And he says, so they put me on these sort of drugs and things like this that were supposed to, like Valium, things that were supposed to like make him go to sleep and put him out. And he says it did the exact opposite. He says I was in there for 5 days. I was like a cat. And he did this like I was like a cat. He said all my senses were triggered. He was like I was just hyper aware. And all these drugs, he said, they kept giving me more drugs to put me out. The more drugs they gave me to put me out, the more heightened all my awareness, and I was fully awake. And he said, so eventually he sort of gamed the system, and he got a day pass to go out eventually. And when he got a day pass, he went straight to the airport, got a ticket to Nepal, flew into Nepal because he'd overstayed his visa by years in India, so he was barred from India. And so he flew to Nepal, and you just walk across that border. I did it by accident. I had to go scurrying back and get my documents done. And so he just walked across the border into India, and he was back in Narmada. And if you want to hide away, Narmada is a pretty good place to do that. Nobody will find him there. So that's my like a cat story. So that's sort of like that hyper awareness also comes into Punarvasu. Like their sun, it's powered by Aditya, the mother of all the suns. Like she's shining bright. She sees everything, right? She's alert and aware very much. So you see, I put some history about bow and arrows in here and things like this. And I find a lot of times these little historical stories about these in the symbols of the nakshatra, they relate. There's you can see the relation to the people. This twin stars, you got a lot of twin stars, like Ashvini. Bharani is also a twinning star. This one's also a very strong twinning star. So we get these kind of things. Might not be twins with this one, might be brother and sister. But again, that dark and light really come out. Joseph Campbell quotes, you can never go wrong with that. Well, I got to do my editing as I go. Stories about the Castor and Pollux. This is interesting. Just the stuff about the stars, their relationships with each other. You also see this sort of dark and light in that. And so they same mothers, different fathers, some of that dark and light, step brothers, step sisters, step siblings will also be in here. And patron saint of travelers, of sailors. How's that feel in your boat, Dana? So they might also like that kind of thing. I'll get into that. But for travelers in general, and for providing that safe passage for travelers, that relates like providing shelter for travelers, providing a safe space for travelers and things like that becomes a very big part of this. Boxers and athletes in that moment of crisis, Punarvasu gives you that second wind also. That's that return of my strength, the return of my energy. It's like, oh, I'm dead, I'm done, I'm defeated by life. And then you get that second wind comes in, whoosh, right? And you're ready to go again. And so that sort of thing is all very Punarvasu sort of things. We talked about horses here and taming horses. Working with horses also seems to be a bit of a thing with Punarvasus. I think my father had some of this. He was a horse trainer. And so he had, I think, some of this kind of thing. We get more of these brotherly stories. Brothers, yeah, it's Jacob and Esau from the Bible. Right, again, that's sort of that dark and that light. The dark is all of that dark feelings we have, all those sort of greed, envy, lust, desire. That's our darkness in life. All of that kind of thing. See, and here we get that necessary desire, or the short-term desires for the long-term goal. And that's that Punarvasu single-minded focus. And I often tell this to students, like, if you really want something, anything that comes along your path, look at it and ask yourself, is that going to get me to what I want? Is that going to help me in any way to get me to that final goal? And if it won't, just drop it, leave it aside, forget about it. Keep going for your goal. Don't let anything distract you, take you off of that path. Occasionally something might be like, well, it's not going to really take me away, or it's not going to do anything. So, okay, a little wayside stop to indulge and play somewhere else, but then you come back to the path again very quickly. So Romulus and Remus, just so many different mythological stories about that brother-sister relationship, the step-sibling relationships. But again, I think this Nietzsche quote is very, very important for Punarvasus. He who fights with monsters should look that he himself does not become the monster. Yeah, and then you gaze into the abyss and it gazes back at you. It's funny, you hear the second half of that quote all the time. You don't hear the first part of that very often, because nobody wants to look at that monster we have within, that darkness we have within. And we have to become familiar with that, get to know that darkness, get to know that beast. And that's, I think, where the animal trainer comes in a sense, with the Punarvasu. it's like you train that beast inside of you as well, that animal, that, right, that dog, that owl, that cat, that all those sort of animals within you, train them, you work with them. And again, like you said about their dogs, they're very well trained, but they're free. And so that's sort of the beast inside. We can't restrain it. You can't just lock it up in a kennel forever. Like it's going to get an unruly dog. And so you have to sort of allow it to be free, just trained, just well behaved somehow. So we get that, the finger and the nose. I don't know. Anytime I see the nose, I want to say, like, are these people sticking their nose into other people's business? Is it kind of nosy, all these nose things? In a sense, I've got something like this from something else in my chart. But again, it makes a good astrologer because I'm always sticking my nose into things that are not my business. I'll just throw something out there and it's like, yeah, yeah. So there might be some of that with them. But then we'll say like problems with the nose. Energetically, it's nose, throat, lungs, be the progression of any illness. Sort of starts very light and gets a little bit worse, and now you've got a problem. And so it might relate with all of these sorts of things. Again, I think it's Vata as well. And so that's from the lungs. And that's, well, Vata can be a little bit sensitive to illnesses as well. The finger and the nose, I don't know. Might makes me think these kids got slapped a lot by their mama when they were a kid. Finger up the nose. Don't do that. Don't pick that. So again, I don't know if Dana wants to share anything like that, but these Punarvasus might kind of be diggers, gold diggers.
I do have like breathing issues, sinusitis. I also, like, I was a diver in a part of my life, so
Oh yeah.
also the sinuses, and then my fingers, literally my fingers, also related to the Gemini part of Punarvasu, I guess. I get inflammation with changes of weather, or some days they're just inflamed. No one knows the cause of anything. I just know it
Okay.
by my chart, but it's
Okay.
there.
Yeah, yeah. She's not admitting she puts the finger and nose thing together, but
When I was little, I did.
yeah,
And my mom
okay.
used to tell me, if you keep on doing it, you're gonna put your nose like to one side.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so we get to the facts. We get to the dark truth of Dana now. She was a nugget digger as a child. So, um, but that's interesting. So she does, their illnesses do go direct to the fingers and the hands. Might be some hand dexterity as well. I think of those when you're pulling the bow, it might also, like, that would be hard on the fingers, a lot of pressure on the fingers. So different things like this. It's interesting, injection medicines also gets involved with this, some intravenous drug use. I think I saw that because I saw some diabetics, I think, that had Punarvasu, probably relating, must be my father did have Punarvasu, the horse trainer, and he was also a diabetic. So injecting the insulin and things like this. Again, it's an arrow, but it's a needle. It penetrates the skin, it penetrates things, it gets inside. And so this kind of thing, normally I'm pretty on top of things when it comes to acupuncture. I would have probably listed that if I saw a bunch of acupuncturists. But again, if it's relating with needles and arrows and pokey things generally, then why not a bit of acupuncture as well? And again, a lot of this, what I'm writing, I can't remember fully. This bit of theory and a bit of research sort of mix. So not everything might be completely accurate. The temporal lobe for memories and things like this. I think again, memories is very important with this Aditya. It's that, like, coming back. Oh, I remember. It's like return to the light in a way with in the mind as well. Things sort of come up again, and oh yeah, I remember that. And so I think there's a lot of that memory, kind of learning memory sort of things coming at Aditya, the great mother. And so you're raising people, and so you're teaching them and trying to get them to memorize things and remember all of that. a lot here on short-term memories. Kind of goal, habit, addiction sort of stuff that we can kind of study in the charts and how that's working inside of ourselves chemically. Gain some memory processing and decision-making stuff. Yeah, very interesting. Again, this might be theory stuff, but just seeing how that emotional response can bring things up very powerful, very immediate. We also know the nose. How powerful is that with memories? Like sometimes you smell something, it's just like, when I got off the bus in Puebla, Mexico, the first thing that hit me, I was like, oh, this smells just like the pollution in New Delhi. I couldn't believe like all that sort of came back. It was just like landing in India when I got there. And it's pollution, but it's kind of a sweet smell. It kind of smells a little bit nice. But again, it's pollution. But it's kind of a nice smell actually. And so I kind of don't, it's like for me, it's like coming home when I smell that. And it's not as bad as it used to be. You used to smell it before the plane landed, and you don't smell it quite then anymore. So that's getting better. So again, you can kind of study some of this stuff on our own. A lot of sort of hormonal things going on with Punarvasus. Again, I almost think I'm saying all this now, and I start to wonder how much Punarvasu might also get related with some thyroid type stuff, right? Some of these hormone stuff in the neck, in the throat, because, well, Gemini is the neck and the throat, and then you've got Cancer, which is coming down into the chest, but Cancer is the emotions and the balance and all of that. Really, Cancer has a lot to do with the hormonal stuff. So Punarvasu is kind of crossing over that. And so that's why I mentioned a bunch of the hormonal, but then I wonder maybe also thyroid could get involved with this. These key themes, reconciliation, reunion, redemption, reincarnation, all of this is very important to Punarvasu. As you see in all those brother stories that are there, there's always this reunion, this returning home sort of sense, the reunion with the brothers, with the family, with an old friend. All of these things really, really come up. The rehabilitation, again, I saw some addictive personalities in here who are always going back for rehab. Become good again, become pure again, become clean and whole again. And that's sort of redemption as well. That's what redemption really is. And so all of these things become very important here. All those lines, right? The straight line, the production line, the assembly line, all of that, the straight and narrow, just all of those metaphors relate with this. Airplanes, missiles. I think it was Musk. Elon Musk, I think, has some Punarvasu, right? And he's sending rockets into space, and he went to Russia to buy ICBMs once, and really, really big into the missiles and the projectiles, in a sense, generally. Strings also play in, string theory sort of plays in. Maybe it's the details of those bigger theories of Sagittarius, kind of that partner to the theory, trying to figure out the details of all of that. But again, a lot of people playing string instruments with this placement, guitars, all of that sort of thing. All those polar opposites, all of that comes into here. The writer must be able to revel and roll in the abundance of words. He must know not only the direct, but also the secret power of the words, the overtones, the undertones of the words, lateral echoes kind of thing. Again, very sort of Punarvasu, knowing the dark and the light, almost knowing the words and the grammar in a sense, kind of knowing both sides of it. Again, lots of really Eugene Hergel. That's the guy who went to Japan early and really, I think, brought the Zen Buddhism at least to Britain where he was. Zen Buddhism and the sort of art of the archer kind of brought all of that back to the West through the UK. Um, yeah, and you can read all of this sort of stuff on the own. Yeah, I got a little note. They can be a little high strung, that tension that we think, especially like guitar strings, we make them too tight, but too tight and they break. And so they really got to find that sort of middle point, that middle balance. Like this. Yeah, again, that spiritual perspective, redemption, forgiveness, reconcile. Uh, Very difficult spiritual practices to do, especially with the family. Like, God, I can't imagine what it would be like to like try to sit down with my brother again and sort of hash things out and reconcile whatever we have between us. God, that would be just, well, I'm as far away from that idea as I can get. I go to India probably to avoid that maybe, but not really. But yeah, no, this kind of reconciliation. It's really hard. And forgiveness, that's really the big, like Aditya, the mother god. The mother is always forgives. She always has to forgive. And so it's like Punarvasu's probably they get hit by those arrows as well. Right? You saw Bhishma laying on the ground with a gazillion of them in them. And so they get hit by those arrows from people. People wound them. And they have to forgive. They have to reconcile Punarvasus. And they'll come back to do that. And if you want spiritual path as a Punarvasu, that's really the path. Reconcile, forgive, find your redemption. So tough path you got, Dana. I feel for you. Yeah. Not an easy spiritual practice, that one. So a lot of that spiritual practice, then we would like, if we're looking at a Punarvasu, we might really focus on the sixth house where they have been wounded, where they have their enemies, where they have their enmity. And it's like, go back to that. See if you can reconcile that. Find your way to forgive these people who have hurt you. And then again, it's like, that might be when we see the Punarvasu suffering and having a lot of problems in their life. It might be because energetically there is somewhere that they have to forgive and they have to sort of reconcile with. And so that might bring a lot of the problems they have. So again, you can kind of read all of that on your own. Oh, here we go, Salvador Dali. And so this shows it's from his birth record. He was an interesting character. I don't know if he was ever in drugs or into a drinking phase in his life. But again, he was that guy that said, like, I don't do drugs, I am drugs. His job was to inspire, to uplift people sort of with his art, bring them down or bring them to a new, just bring out this new wild sort of art. And then nurture the ones who are coming behind him, nurture those other students. Not sure of his chart, but I'll bet he's done a lot of teaching and a lot of probably like working with children as well, even art classes and teaching art and just working with that next generation that's coming up behind him. Again, destroying the shackles that limit the vision. Yeah, this is a quote by him. And that's what Aditya is trying to do. Destroy that darkness, destroy things that are limiting the vision of what can be. Where are you going in the future? What can you do from that? Where are you going from here? So I would imagine when we think of coaches, like, okay, we think like sports coaches and things, but I think a lot of that modern coaching that's going on now, a lot of that coaching, like, I think of coaching as helping people to achieve the future they want. Counseling is helping people to reconcile with their past, right? So a lot of people, depends how messed up they are, but a lot of people, we got to kind of reconcile all that past. Then now we're dealing with where you are now. And then we can start to work with where are you going in the future? Where is this path taking you? What's possible? And so that starts off with a dream in a lot of ways. Like, what's your dream? What's your big thing that you think is impossible? Okay, well, here's how you get that. Here's how you start that. And so Aditya is very much of really starting on the path. I think there's even this sense of like, that mama nurtures the student, the child, until it's time to go to school. And then Aditya is also this sort of letting go in a sense, like, hey, you're good, you're ready, go and blossom on your own in a sense. So I'm just going to kind of skip over the ascendant one because again, we did more chance a lot of those are wrong. But when you get into, yeah, you got something, Emmett?
Yeah, just to add on it again, I guess. My friend that I told you is Punarvasu's son, and I think Dana will relate with this as well. That like his teaching style is exactly what you're saying, where like they put the guide point and then they give strategies on how to get to that guide point, and then they let go. Like
Yeah.
it's just like, yep, like here's how you do it, but I'm not attached. Like you got this kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to walk you to the end of this. Like, here's your
Yeah.
foundation. And so Aditya is really much like kind of once those seeds start to sprout, well, it's somebody else's job now. I'm done. You're good on your own. And so, yeah,
I wish I had that.
yeah, 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 what was I gonna
It's
say?
the art of letting go, really.
It is that art of letting go. And that's also when you think of the bow, right? You pull it back and it's not like you find that calm, that peace, you find your zen, and then you let go. And then it finds its target. And so that letting go part, I think, is very important part of the bow and arrow, very important part of the Punarvasu as well. Like, yeah, once you kind of reconcile, then you can let go of that again. But you've got to kind of do it right. You've got to do the zen of letting go, in a sense, is the higher version of Punarvasu.
It's like they have that time of setting up and getting the perfect shot and the perfect stability, and then it's just one strike or one let go, and then they release it after.
Yeah.
Cool.
And in a sense, it's like they get their goal by letting go, also in a way. Like you have to let go to get there. So yeah, very, very interesting metaphors and how it all kind of comes together. So we can start to look at some of these people that have, how many charts do I have down here? Not a lot. Come back up here again. So we get these like really great philosophers, Levin's, Archibald Wheeler, he was like a string theorist guy. George Bush Jr. Actually, the people I'm staying with now, this is a fully aside, has nothing to do with anything, but sometimes it does, so I'm going to say it anyways. People I'm staying with now, Addie's basically husband, I guess. They've been together long enough. He's got to go in the garage and he doesn't care about this. He was an entertainer, kind of comedian guy, and so he was called in to entertain some like Democratic Congress, like a Democrat kind of conference, I guess, and a couple on the Republican side. So you go in the garage and he's got this picture. He's looking very happy, shaking George Bush's hand. He's got another one with Obama, the whole crew and Obama, and yeah, someone else. Who's the other guy? Oh, it's Dick Cheney, but no, I think there was another president there even. Anyway, so something like that. So there's some George Bush Jr. sort of stuff. If we think of someone like George Bush, we can see like how many missiles did that guy launch, and he was really black and white. You're either for with us or against us. Remember that? And I think Punarvasu's can be a little that way too. Like now it's time to fight for something. It's like, well, now it's time to fight. So you're either with me or against me, and that's that. And that's a little bit of that. Might be a little bit of tunnel vision with Punarvasus because they're just looking at the target. They might not see, they might miss some of the stuff that around. Kind of that Gemini side too, the details. They're looking at the details and oh, there's a whole forest here. I see. Like the elephant too, that story, they're all touching different parts of the elephant and they don't realize it's an elephant. You just get these little glimpses of their perspective, and so Punarvasus might have to watch out for that becoming a little bit too too narrow. I see Dana's, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I pick you up and I throw you back down again, pick you up. And,
But it's true. It's true. When I am in an unbalanced state and I don't like look at myself, I am a very I get extremist in my ideas and I have to go back to looking at the forest, like you say, and I always remember that elephant story. Actually, it helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's a good story to remind Punarvasus of, really. So like saying, anytime you're giving a Punarvasu reading, you can, it's their medicine, these little stories. Uh, like that, certainly. Um, who else do we got here? Evergreen, Steven Crowder. Someone like Steven Crowder. I don't know if you know him. He's like a YouTuber. I don't even know if he still does this, but he was known for this being very direct. He was going to college campuses in the all across America, change my mind sort of slogan. So he's bringing up these really controversial things and being like, well, tell me why I'm wrong about this. And so there's a lot of very just like dove into the controversy. But he was also working, like he was going back to the universities, these kids, and trying to sort of, in a way, change their mind by saying, come and change my mind. Kind of thing. But yeah, so he was very direct and very controversial. I remember he really liked shooting. He was a shooting guy. I think he was from Canada and moved to the US or something like that. And he really liked the gun culture in the US, kind of thing. So you could say a straight shooter. Sylvester Stallone, there's a straight shooter for you. He shot lots of guns. A lot of fake guns, at least. I imagine he probably likes real ones too. Oh, he has a big gun range at his home or something like that. Thinking you should see the Varanasi Gapt astrologer. That's not a compliment, Dana, to be the same category as him. It might sound like it. Oh, I've got the same as a Varanasi Gapt astrologer, but he's an astrologer who's losing his memory and his mind, as I've met him. And so he's a very interesting character. It'd be worth it to sit him out and give him 100 rupees, $2 or $3 to hear a spiel. Bit of the entertainer on site. Who else do we have here? Yeah, I look at some of the people that I know kind of at the end of this. She I never actually really got to know, but I think she was quite a character, kind of supporting a lot of just supporting a lot of people, helping a lot of people to grow in some way. A Russian person, I think a little bit of wealth as well, but just really sort of seed capital for a lot of other people to get businesses, and really giving a lot of advice. Charlotte as well. She's kind of an online coach, influencer sort of woman. Very beautiful woman, very good at yoga and all of that kind of stuff. Still young though, I think but she also studied philosophy in university. I don't know how far she went. Sylvia Dadlavita also kind of doing coaching, and an Italian woman, lived for a long time, used to come back to Varanasi every year for a bunch of years. Very sort of gentle soul, but also doing kind of coaching sort of business. She was one of these people. I told her, I said, oh, looks like you're going to have a baby in about 2 years. And she looked at me like I was just out of this world. Like she didn't have a relationship. She had no, like, thinking of no hope for a relationship. She's got a little problem with one of her feet. And she was very self-conscious about it because she was always kind of limping or sort of hobbling around sort of thing. And so I think she also thought, like, I'll never have a boyfriend. Like, what guy wants me? I'm broken. And sure enough, she met an amazing guy. And of course, I got the message from them and things like that. So that was Sylvia. Priyani Baksani is her name, Priti Baksani. She's also kind of a coach. Really, really Aditya figures, likes working with a lot of the young girls in India to kind of like inspire and uplift and give them like kind of women's empowerment, you could say, with the young girls. Very strong that way. Jen Child, she's like full power coach. I think she does really well. She teaches yoga in Bali. She's got all her media stuff together. She's got it all. She's one of the successful coaches, you could say. think she started off, she's got money in the family, so she's also comfortable enough that that whether she coaches or not, she doesn't matter. There's another side of me, think some of these coaches that have money and do the nice media, I don't know how much money they actually make from coaching in a sense, right? Because they're already comfortable on their own. And so it's hard to tell. Marie, Jen plays guitar. Marie also plays guitar. Sylvia plays guitar. Priti plays guitar. A lot of guitar. Dana, do you play guitar? String instruments?
I'm learning to play the uke, but I'm
Okay.
really bad with string instruments, but it's the ones I love the most, especially the sound of harps.
Okay.
I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think
My
you know,
friend's the same thing. He's not great, but he loves trying to learn string instruments more than any other
okay.
one.
So
I use it for mantras. Like I have the uke and my boyfriend, he does play guitar, and I just make my own, like I hold it not like you hold a guitar. I just
okay.
like play the
Oh yeah.
strings and I just chant the mantras.
Perfect. So there we go. We can find all that stuff coming out. Um, and this for these people, this is Sun and Punarvasu now. So this is kind of how they're expressing themselves, and so expressing themselves through guitar, through that sort of harmony, that balance of opposites in a sense, would come into that. Like if you think of someone like Sylvester Stallone, it was always this good versus evil. That's every movie he ever made, in a sense. That so balancing that opposites in the sense. The Varanasi Ghat astrologer, well, he used to be a freedom fighter in India, and so also that balance between good and evil, good and bad, very strong. Sort of, there can be a strong polarization in Punarvasus, in that dark and the light. You can see Diane Haggerty, the sorceress of the Church of Satan. So there's black magic and all of that. Saint John of the Cross. He was quite a hard, rough man, but again, a prophet like that. Malala Yousafzai. Anyway, she's that young Pakistan girl who was talking a lot about like women's empowerment, like Priti Baksani was. So she's some kind of an activist that way. I'm not exactly sure how that works for her, but she really got to travel a lot and talk about women's empowerment. Nikola Tesla, in a sense, he never really actually made any great inventions on his own. He just planted all these seeds for knowledge for kind of students to come up and pick up where he left off. Like I was saying with my research as well, like just like don't redo what I've done, just pick up from that and work from that space. Really comes in strong here. Let's see if we got a chart here. Oh, 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 I got a mess of everything. I don't have things attached to themselves like they're supposed to be. But you can see Nobel Prize for Physics. Magnetic movement of the electron. Now, I don't know if I've written about this or mentioned it other places, but magnets are those polar opposites and the movement through the polarities due to that polarity. And so here's a guy working with magnets. So some of those magnetic forces I would expect would also come in the positive, negative polarities. And that's how you make energy. That's how you produce power. And so we see actually Tesla, this is Sun in third. Tesla, Archibald Wheeler was a great scientist. Willis Eugene Lamb, electromagnetism. I don't think Stephen Cowder, I'm not sure if his birth time is right. But you get like Stephen Crowder was kind of a Dave Stucci sort of character. Dave Stucci was who Dirty Harry. He's the cop, the real life Dirty Harry. That Clint Eastwood sort of used this guy to do the Dirty Harry stuff. Stephen Crowder's kind of a Dirty Harry sort of figure as well. in a sense, even Jen Childs, the way she does her coaching is also a little bit like shooting from the hip, in a sense. We get that kind of thing. If there's any people's charts that you want to see, just say, and I'll just pull it up on this other one. This guy's chart is so fascinating. This guy just blows me away. So you can see this metal rod shot up through his skull like this. And so he ended up getting some sort of strange memory problems. His personality changed quite a bit from light to dark. He was actually a really nice man until this happened. And then he became a little bit of a, this might relate as well with Punarvasu, because then he became a little bit of a sideshow sort of character. He traveled around with this metal rod and say, hey, look what happened to me and I lived, sort of idea. But he was working the railroads, and explosive charge went off and shot up through him. So we think of the Punarvasus. I don't know if he was a hunter or a shooter and used guns or anything like that, but this is a pretty rough way for Punarvasu to express itself. Yeah, and again, I'm not certain about the rectification on his chart, because I don't, maybe there was a birth time for this guy actually. But you can see the Saturn in first house kind of iron through the brain or iron in the blood. And so he quite literally had a chunk of iron go up through him. Like that. Where are we? Oh, he's got all his Punarvasu is actually, has he got maybe a bunch of planets in Punarvasu? No, actually, it's just the sun in Punarvasu is the only one of all of those. But that became part of his identity, you could say, the sun ruling identity. Anyways, we can work on these charts some more. But again, the metal rod, the memory stuff with him, the dark to light, really a lot of big Punarvasu themes with him. So we'll come into the moon here in Punarvasu. Again, just a lot of people really shooting from the hip, really direct sort of people. Oh, I was going to say with that guy, he was doing that sort of sideshow kind of work. And that's like Punarvasus, I think they can kind of be a little bit jugglers, gymnastics. They can kind of get involved with that sort of circus type stuff in a sense, right? A sideshow, step right up, everybody in a sense. We saw that with one of the other nakshatras behind as well. Again, that sort of dark and light, maybe being able to take on different personalities and different personas that way, kind of tap into our own sort of light and darkness in a sense. See a lot of people working with electromagnetic. Michael Faraday has this. Hiroshima happened when Moon was in Punarvasu. I think part of that relates with, like, as soon as, like, Punarvasu might relate with sort of natural disasters and big disasters, because as soon as that disaster strikes, you get all these mothering figures. There's all these like little children and weak people that need to be taken care of somehow. And so that's sort of part of that dark and light of Punarvasu also. There's this big disaster, but then you see this light that comes from it, that light that wants to kind of regrow and renew all the people, but also the land, replant, re-put seeds, rebuild, recreate, all of that sort of stuff becomes Punarvasu. And so probably related with a lot of sort of natural disasters in Punarvasu. Robertson Davies, he was actually, Emmett, you've read Robertson Davies, I hope? Anyways, every good Canadian should read Robertson Davies. He was one of my early gurus, was reading his books. And he published some books under a pseudonym as well. And so you'll find that in Punarvasu. It was like his dark side, these really mischievous sort of books. Samuel Marchbanks was his alter ego. And so you'll see the alter ego, I think, also in Punarvasus. I'm stabbing Dana again. I can see by her face. I just gave her a poke there. Um, so,
It's quite funny because this alter ego thing, since I was young, like when I do something that is like out of the morals of my morals, for example, when I used to drink so much in university, I used to say like, well, Dana is staying home and this alter ego, which had a name and everything, would come out. And I used to say it all the time and do this, like split my personalities like in a
yeah.
fun way, because I suppose there's also a bit of humor with the Gemini side of it, the puns, all that. And I really, this alter ego thing, what you were saying, I really feel connected to it.
So one of the things we might see then with people who have heavy malefics in Punarvasu, that split personality might not be very pleasant. So again, if you don't have that malefic, well, it's not bad. It's just Dana going out and getting drunk and wild for a night. And I'm sure, like, probably from a lot of people's perspective, it's like, that was pretty tame. So anyway, she's got nice planets in Punarvasu. So, but I'm sure if we get those malefics, it's the split personality, a schizophrenia, like, look at that Satan worshiper woman that we had up above. What the heck was her name? She here? That was a son. But here, I'll pull up like Pollyann Seguin's chart. Yes, killed her stepfather.
Maybe it has to do also with Punarvasu, but my other obsession, like, my job is like to try and help people and this, but my other obsession is true crime. I'm obsessed with studying criminals and I watch everything about them. And it's about that darkness that we have to admit that we all, as human beings, could reach
Yeah.
that level. And it's really my other obsession, so the light and the dark.
Interesting, yeah. A lot of the true crime also, oh no, that's not your chart. A lot of true crime, I don't know if you have any Giesta placements in your chart, but they're also really,
No, but I really love Jeshta. For some reason, I feel very connected, but I think, no, my Saturn is not, it's in Scorpio, but not in Jeshta.
check your Navamsha, you'll probably have Giesta there. I find that too, when there's certain nakshatras I feel very connected with. I look Navamsha and there it is. But if we look, you can see the chart on the screen now, I think. Yeah, Marianne Polly Seguin. And so she was a killer. And so, well, she has Moon in Punarvasu, but Rahu and Mars are both afflicting that. And so, again, that split personality for her was also probably quite pronounced. She became a killer in her dark side because of the affliction that was happening there, right? Nothing to sort of alleviate that affliction. And so emotionally, yeah, she's very sort of probably split in her mind. Up this guy's chart for fun. So we see someone like Keanu Reeves. He's like this, on one hand, he's this sort of, I don't know what his personality is that way, but on one hand, he's this like pretty chilled out dude, like good sense of humor, a nice guy. But he's one of the most highly trained, like for SWAT, for killing people. And I don't know if he uses this in real life or not. I know he certainly trains it, but that's then he goes into the movies and really becomes this sort of secret agent with a split personality who's like just an average Joe, but then he goes off and kills all these people. And so that's sort of coming through his Punarvasu, that these afflictions and what he's known for and his reputation, in a way, he's at least his screen reputation is this really deadly killer, in a lot of ways. So we get these kind of Punarvasus coming out, in harsh ways. Trying to think. Even you could say the Gat astrologer now, he also sort of has his dark side. He was this freedom fighter, and I think he was kind of, maybe he had some fame. but now he's this astrologer, this kind of hiding sort of his darkness, his secrets, that his memory's going, like it's completely gone. This is the guy, I don't know if I've told you a story. I was walking through Varanasi, and I knew him before. He'd done a little poem thing for me and blah, blah, blah. I kind of support, even if he's not a real astrologer, here's a couple bucks, get yourself some chai. We'll play the game sort of thing. But then he came up to me, completely forgot who I was. I knew him for several years at this point, and he came up, astrology. I was walking with a friend, well, the one Canadian friend who came to India with me. My friend goes, "Oh, I'm with my astrologer," and he goes, "Oh, you're an astrologer?" I said, "Yeah, I do astrology. I do Jyotish." And he takes me by the arm aside. He's, "You have to help me. You have to help me. Here's my birth details. I make my chart for me." And so then right away I knew, well, how good is this astrologer if he's just like grabbing the first astrologer he meets on the street, kind of thing. And so I did his chart for him. And well, that was kind of funny because the next time I saw him, he didn't remember me. And so he just kind of walked by. I tried to get his attention. He kind of ignored me like I was a stranger. Then the next time he came by, he remembered me again. So I was there in his mind again. And so I read his chart, and it's always like this. Like, and I've read his chart for him like 3 times. I've given him readings, and he just doesn't remember who I am sometimes. He's just completely blanks out. And so that's the famous astrologer of Varanasi. Yeah, so good guy. I like him. He's nice. He's harmless. He's great. Spends most of his money on booze and drugs. Yeah, he's a good time guy now. So like that. I don't know. I see something like the United Kingdom there. That once had the empire where the sun never sets, but very light. So that's very Aditya, you could say, right? The sun never sets. But at the same time, there's a lot of darkness in that. Like the sun never sets. They rule over all these lands. They treated everybody like children. Everybody became wards of the state in a sense. So there's that darkness in the light never setting. Here's one I found funny. The third one there, Qasim Soleimani. He was the general of Iran. He was the big general. He was like, I don't know, they called him the shadow general, a shadow wolf, or something like that. Again, the dark and the light and the shadows. But then he was killed by a missile strike. And so you've got that missile sort of thing. I think the Americans drone bombed him or something like that. That was sort of maybe the most controversial warlike thing I think Trump did. Was to just that assassination. In a way, got his name right beside Ramana Maharishi. And again, it's like everybody was his children, and one might have been a general and one might have been a saint. Again, the dark and the light between those two. But either way, they were the great mother. They were the ones providing shelter. I don't know if Iran has something like this, but Israel has like the Iron Dome. And so also that sort of sheltering of Iran, somehow he was probably also involved in a similar sort of idea. Those kinds of things. Courtney Love, obvious, like really 2 sides to her. Very bright on one side, but then just a lot of darkness and drug addiction also came through her life. Roman Polanski. Again, it's like my knowledge of these people is a little bit failing, but he was like a movie director or a movie producer or something like that. But I think he also played with a lot of that alter ego, the dark and the light, the good and the evil sort of stuff. But that's kind of Hollywood in general. But there's been a lot of sort of Hollywood sort of people. I think he's known for a little bit weird, strange movies. This is maybe another thing that comes in. I talked about the circus, the sideshow type stuff. There might also be in the alter egos type stuff. This Margot Jersey girl that I have at the bottom of the third. she did a lot of, what do you call it, kind of cosplay kind of stuff where they dress up and it's literally an alter ego that they have, or right, they dress up in these costumes and take on these literally these alter egos. Pam G also did a little bit of that sort of alter ego kind of thing, like that. Yeah, more chemistry, some psychologists. Um, we see an alter ego coming up. I'll pull that. I don't know if his time is correct, but Larry Nasser. I don't know if you know who he was. He was like a physiotherapist for women's gymnastics in the US. And then his scandal came out, like he'd been abusing these young girls. I think like gymnastics are young. Like you're a professional gymnast at like the age of 15. By the time you're 18, you're done. And so he was working with a lot of quite young girls, and he had a big scandal. I'm pretty sure he's in jail now. So again, that dark side and that light side, like a lot of people just knew him as this really nice guy, family, right? Professional sort of guy, but he had this alter ego, this darkness that was hidden. You see his chart. I ended up rectifying for here. I think the reason I rectified this here is because I wanted to put all this Sun, Venus, Moon in his 8th house, because the Venus, Moon in the 8th can have sexual relations with younger girls, younger women, and then the Venus is the 6th lord going in there, and so that criminal, that accusations for sexual things sort of came that way, and then the Rahu and the 7th, these sort of cloudy relationships he was making, and that kind of thing. Again, I'm not sure if this was his chart or not, but this is what I came up with. Interesting. I don't know if I changed something here. Oh, there's his moon in Punarvasu. So you got moon and Rahu both in Punarvasu here. Sun and Venus are slasha. So a lot of that dark and light, and really maybe because it's in the 8th house, really hiding that dark side much more, hiding that alter ego, keeping it secret, keeping it private. And then obviously it only sort of maybe came out when he was in private, right? Because otherwise out in front of everybody, he was this great guy. So that sort of thing. Or else, he's one of these guys who he had a heavy drinking problem when he was younger. He was a professional football player in Canada. And in those days, he was a big time drinker, just troublemaker, a big tough guy. And he came back to the light. He found a spiritual path. He quit drinking. He became a speaker, sort of traveling and teaching and really trying to help the youth avoid those addictive tendencies that he got into. And so that kind of stuff comes in. Oh, there's a chart here. Oh, this was a suicide chart. Not sure what else she was famous for. Oh, adult films and sexploitation films. These were sexploitation films. Apparently it was a thing, I think in the 60s. And wasn't full pornography. It was just like a boob would sort of pop out. It was this sort of gratuitous nudity kind of thing. But again, I'm sure she had a little bit of an alter ego to get involved in all that kind of stuff. Would have came involved. We don't see a heavy affliction on the moon here, but we see some afflictions other places in her chart, disturbing the mind. Saturn and Mars both influencing her 4th house. Even the Rahu and the Ascendant really allowed her to kind of push boundaries and do things that other people weren't willing to do, like that. Yeah, this was from AA from birth record. Looking for the suicide here. You know, her suicide isn't really jumping out as an obvious thing to me in this chart. No, I'm not seeing it an obvious thing. Back in 71, she did it, so that was a Mercury period. Yeah, maybe just part of the Mercury period, maybe just struggling with those two identities too much to a certain degree, but I'd have to look into her chart to sort of find out why she became so depressed as to do suicide. Again, especially when it comes to Hollywood, a lot of suicides aren't suicides either. They're murders. Just mark it down as suicide. There's a lot. There are protected people in there. There's a couple other charts of like women who died on very mysterious circumstances. There was a lot of rumors. These big name actors might have been involved, but rumors. You look at the charts and it's like, yeah, I don't think that's just a rumor. That dark underbelly of Hollywood. Really. So this picture was not made for decorating rooms. It's an offensive and defensive instrument of war against the enemy. Very, very Punarvasu. Offense and defense all mixed into there. It's like, this isn't meant to be pretty. This is a weapon. I'm shooting you. I'm trying to hit your soft spots somehow. So now where are we? We're Mars. So once we get away from the sun and the moon planets, sometimes these other planets, the energies of that get expressed outside of ourselves somehow. So this could be like the men and the males and the competitors of their life tend to have these stronger Punarvasu sort of relations. But it might be the same sense, like these people in their activity, they become very direct. Since competitors are so direct, then you meet that competition very directly. Mars and excuse me. Addie's son makes me coffee and he makes it so strong and so black. It's just like a fine sipping whiskey. You can't drink it fast. You just have to take these small little small little hits of coffee. It's like even someone like Marie Antoinette. She's the one that said, "Let them eat cake." Yeah, I'm getting some nods. So she's kind of actually, she was in that character. She actually did a lot of social work type stuff. Like she was always kind of working for the poor, working to help alleviate all of that. But another side of her, she had no sense of money. And so she was also, there's a lot of gambling back in those days. I think Punarvasus can gamble a little bit. Alter ego type stuff, right? Any addictive tendencies, it's usually like you fall into that alter ego and it takes over. But so she was doing a lot of gambling and she lost tons of money from the state. Like she was losing money like crazy. And that's what started to cause, like then she didn't have money to help the poor in a way. And she didn't have money to kind of do all this sort of social work she was doing. And so that led on to the revolution in a sense. And she took a lot of the blame for being in that position. And so there's a lot of dark and light with Marie Antoinette as well. She was doing all that to help the poor, but she was completely divorced from them. She had like, you don't have bread, what's the problem? Eat cake. Kind of what she was saying. It wasn't trying to be mean, she was trying to help. And that didn't work very well. So these kind of things, we see more like serial killers, Paul Bernardo, and that dark and light, those alter egos coming out. Alexander the Great, again, great light, figure of light and that thing. And I think again, a lot of these people, certainly at one point in their life, I don't know if it's like the bamboo that only blooms once, but at some point of their life, they're really this really blooming, great mother caretaking, sheltering figure. And Alexander the Great, he was a little bit like the UK. The light doesn't set. He just opened up all this land and traveled and made it part of his kingdom, in a sense. That penetrating too, like going through boundaries, that warrior, you got to get in there, in a sense, of that happening. Amy San Marcos, atom engineer. Wow, these guys really, they really do have a darkness and a light. Amy was really interesting. She was a doctor and trained in the doctor and working in a big hospital, like full on involved in that. Now she's getting away from that. She wants to open her own clinic, but she wants to start incorporating like the medicinal, like ayahuasca and mushrooms and all these sort of counterculture medicinal things. And so I think there can be a counterculture side to a lot of these. Atom engineer is very interesting. He's pretty outgoing guy. It's funny, I met him, but he's one of the few people we kept in touch with after I left construction. And I met him as this engineer in construction. We're like, I know you from somewhere. I'm like, yeah, I know you from somewhere. I don't know where it is. And then one day he came and he's like, did you ever study at Temple Kung Fu? And I was like, yeah. And it was like we matched up the times. He was one of my instructors there. And you had a lot of different instructors when you're at Temple. A lot of like you'd work one-on-one for an hour with whatever instructor was kind of available at the time. And so he was one of these instructors. And so he's just like, oh, he's a super nice guy, kind of this dopey engineer sort of guy. But underneath that, he's deadly, man. Like if you train Temple Kung Fu, even as far as I didn't get anywhere near as far as he did. Like I'm deadly. I can kill people. Like if that muscle memory kicks in, memory again sort of idea, but the muscle memory kicks in, like I have no idea what I could do to someone in a sense, because my training was like block and kill the person, right? In a sense, block and like break 6 bones, like make sure they can't swing at you again. And so we never did tournaments, obviously, because we would just hurt people. And so Adam's kind of like that. Really, he's got this kind of really 2 sides to him like this. Bhairava Anutera also, he kind of runs an ashram. Interesting. He also wanted to get into bringing things like ayahuasca and mushrooms and some of these medicinal sort of herbs onto the land. And I've always like, everybody has told me that meets him, like he's just light, like very guru figure, a little bit like me in a lot of ways. But everybody that meets him is always like, there's a darkness behind him. There's something going on underneath the guru facade, in a sense. Julius Caesar as well. You don't get to a position with that without stabbing a few people in the back. David Lynch, he was another film producer or director or something. I think a lot of weird movies he made. We get Keanu Reeves here again. Patsy Cline, Karl Marx. What was I going to say about Karl Marx? Punarvasu. Well, he also had this dark and light side because he was a communist and the ideal of all the communist values, but I think he was also quite a large landowner and had a lot of private property and actually had pretty good wealth. He wasn't a starving communist looking for money from outside at all. Though I think he had some supporters that also supported him. Wes is also interesting. He's kind of a guy I've known for a lot of years. He's constantly going in and out of these sort of alter ego personalities. Always, his life is always going from this sort of darkness back to the light again. Always kind of returns back to some spiritual tradition like that. See some really powerful philosophers with this. Immanuel Kant, Albert Camus. Up above we had, oh no, that was with Moon. But also quite powerful for philosophy. Aaron Schrodinger, I think he might have been a scientist. See again, the memory disorders coming into this. Kent Cochran, another problem with the memory, the guy with the thing up through his head, memory problems. They just some connection with that Punarvasu and memory really comes strong and seems obvious. We get someone like Nostradamus. In his sense, we can even see like there was a revival of him in modern times where everybody started like, I think it was before all that 2012 sort of chaos. Everybody was like, Nostradamus made a prediction, man. He predicted this war and this like third world war sort of stuff. And everybody was talking like this revival of Nostradamus's predictions in a way. Really came up for a long time. Now I don't think I never hear about Nostradamus anymore.
I think they debunked his stuff because all his things were writing in French. I think it's him, right? He's the
Okay,
French
maybe.
astrologer. Yeah, all the stuff was written in French, and they're saying that the translations from I haven't looked at his French writing yet, but I watched a documentary on him, and they were saying that in the translation, think the predictions became different, and what he was saying was vague enough that it could apply to so many things. So I think that's why he lost a lot of his value over the years, because people started looking into his predictions and being like, anyone could have said this thing at that point in time. He was just one of the first people to be able to really send out mass market stories or predictions that a lot of people had access to. So I
Yeah.
think that's what built his rather than his ability, was more his ability to spread rather than his ability to be accurate.
Yeah. Well, there is a side of all astrologers. So I'll hit all of us with this one. There's a side of all astrologers where we're kind of snake oil salesmen in a way as well, right? There's that part.
Astrology isn't real.
Yeah, exactly. And so
We're making it up.
yeah, there is a like, and well, it comes out sometimes when you're like, you've got the wrong birth time for somebody and you're reading it and they're like this, and you're kind of making it work. And you're like, yeah, this chart seems to work. And then you find out they find their birth document, you're way off, and you're just like, I'm such a hack. Like, yeah.
And I think the goal of astrology, though, isn't, and everyone will have a different opinion. The goal is to help transition from A to B, not to be accurate, because like nothing's accurate. Everything's an interpretation, and at the end of the day, it's just to help give a path to follow, not to define.
Well, Sanjay, my teacher always hammered home. He was always like, if you can't make a prediction, you can't call yourself an astrologer. And so, well, there is that side. And I kind of say that too. There's Vedic astrologers who teach and they go, oh, you can't make predictions anymore because there's too much electromagnetic radiation in the sky. And Sanjay laughs and he's like, oh, I can't make a predictions because it's too cloudy today. Sort of idea. And so there is this side. If you can make predictions, it's like, no, you're really an astrologer. Like that. So that's where we sort of like prove our knowledge, even to ourselves, is through those predictions. I talk about that too with astrology charts. When it comes to rectification, for example, like it's really easy to look at a chart and sort of like see how things are kind of working. And you're like, oh yeah, that I can see how that would work, and that might give that. But then it's like you go into the dasha system, find out when that child was born, find out when that career started, when that marriage happened, when did they meet that person? And that's really, it's in that predictive, in those details where you really find out if the chart is working. Because in some way we can kind of make charts work. And from another perspective, if things are coming out in that person's life, it's because there's multiple indicators of that in the chart. And so sometimes when you're turning the chart, you'll get things that's like, I don't know, you had a bad home life. And so you look, okay, well, Saturn's destroying it. You turn it like that. Oh, you're getting out, your home is now aspected by Mars and Rahu. You turn it again, and it's like, oh, there's Ketu and there's this thing. And so it's like everywhere you're looking, it's like, okay, I can see how your home is destroyed, sort of thing. So it's really tough. So at the end of the day, we have to come to those predictions to make sure the chart is working. So I literally go back in people's past and I start somewhere and I say, this happened then, and then it went like this, and then life went like that, and kind of broad, 6-month sort of predictions of how life was. But then inside of that, you can go, oh, they'll say, oh, I got married at that time. And so then you go in and you find the 3rd level dasha and say, okay, I can see how that would be a marriage. So, yeah. So, yeah, we're just a bunch of snake oil salesmen going around. No, this is great. You got to try it. It's going to change your life. It's a wonderful thing. Let's do it, man.
It's like the keto diet. It's like, oh yeah, you can lose weight while just eating bacon, kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, that's genius. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you want to change your life, you want to fix things, start doing this mantra, like, no, it'll work. You just got to do it, man. Trust me. I'm good. That'll cost you an extra $50 for the mantra, though.
I think Deepak Chopra does that. I think he he has people do readings or coaching, and then he'll charge people an extra 50 for their mantra.
Well, if you want to be a successful astrologer, you charge for the mantra, you sell the stones, you sell the herbal products. You're good to go, man. Like, you're making bucks all the way through that.
I'm a bit more direct, and maybe that's my Punarvasu. When they come to me, I say there is a section of Jyotish and Vedic astrology that is remedies, but I don't do that. I'm like, I give you the news, I give you this, and then I always say, like, I'm not an expert in that. And sometimes I send people to you, like, if you want a mantra, like, I don't do that because my belief is that it's self-knowledge really what matters. So because I'm like very empty in my ritualistic approach to life, I don't give them mantras, I don't give them remedies, I just tell them how it is.
One of the things about mantras, so when we give mantra, mostly I'm giving mantras now from the 5th house, basically. And the 5th house is our intelligence. That's that sort of general vibration of the mind. And so you give that mantra, and the mantra sort of cleans the mind. And so the full light of what's in your mind without all the clutter sort of helps attune it to the vibration, the natural vibration of that person's mind. And so they can think more clearly and they can find their own path more clearly, sort of thing. I'll occasionally tell people, like, if you want to find a mantra, like sometimes I'll be like, well, Shiva mantra for that person. But if you want to find a mantra, start like looking into Shiva. Or if you want to find your personal mantra, start doing Om Namah Shivaya, or start doing one of those kind of Maha mantras. And from there, then you can find what your personal mantra will be. It'll just get revealed to you somehow. So, yeah. Maha mantras, you can always get a feel of that person more Vishnu or Shiva or Krishna, and just recommend that Maha mantra to them. Because this is, again, one of the things Sanjay really impressed upon me, and Indian people when they come for readings, when I'm going through the villages doing like 20 readings in an hour, all they want is the remedy. It's like, don't tell me what's going to happen. I don't care about that. How can I fix it? How can I make my future better? And so that kind of also, like Sandra is like, well, that also proves that Vedic astrology, as much as it's faded in karma, we believe in some kind of free will because we give these remedies. And so you can do something about it. So anyway, just start giving remedies. It's great. People love it. Yeah.
That's why I don't give it, because I know they want it and I know they love it, but I'm trying not to give them the solution so they can, if they find a mantra on their own, like I
Yeah.
will tell them, I will speak about mantra and the philosophy and all that, but I will not give them the mantra because I really believe if you are attuned to your chart, you will eventually get to the mantra that is for you. So
Yeah,
I don't
well,
want to be that person.
maybe you're supposed to be that instrument, is to give them the mantra. Otherwise, they'll go to some like 200-hour yoga teacher trainer and get their mantra
They'll
from
come
them.
back,
They
they'll
should get
come
it from
back
a,
like it didn't work.
yeah. No, they'll get all confused and be lost from their path because their great
No, I
Aditya
will.
mother didn't send them on their way. Yeah, it's like, here's your mantra, go do it. So
Maybe I'll try that.
you should think about giving mantras. You're a body of wisdom and hope and knowledge for these people, Dana. Like, share that with them. Don't make them get their mantra from the 200-hour teacher yoga. Like, come on, that's why they came to you. You're professional. You know, I can trust Dana. She'll won't send me the wrong way. So think about it. Think about it. We'll also skip down to where the next planet is here.
I might that my laptop might die any second. There's no power cord here, so if I
Yeah,
leave.
that's going to be the signal for the end of this class. Also, when my
Okay.
laptop gives me the signal and says you're done, it's way on the other side of the property. So, we got a bit of time. We're good. We're still cruising along. This is where it's also too bad. It's like it's been 2 hours, and I'll go to whatever 2.5 probably before this is over. But I've just gone through the Punarvasu on Gemini side. There's that whole Cancer side, like, and I missed that on other ones too, because it's just like you got an extra hour or something. But it's, yeah, as we go through these names, we sort of open up different parts of Punarvasu. It kind of reveals it through these people to a certain degree. Here we get the oh, jeepers. We get the Mercury and we got Mercury in Punarvasu, Mercury in Gemini. And so Mercury's probably going to be pretty good in Punarvasu because Mercury can really see both sides of things. That's really the Mercurial energy. And so it'd probably work quite well here. See, someone like Carl Jung has this. Really great. Patabi Joyce, like really big Gurujis have this sort of thing. Andriane, she's not here today. She's on the road, but again, she's got this. Kate Poland, actually, Kate Poland and Andriane, very similar energy in the two of them. Kate is, oh, she's probably the only person I might call a master masseuse. Like, she's just really trained a lot in energy, a lot of different massage techniques. She's, I don't know how old she is. She must be later 30s now. So she's got a lot of experience. She's just, yeah, she's really, really great. That way, very direct, very goes for it. Andriane, of course, is a musician, guitar playing. Marie Pio, also a musician. In Seychelles, actually, he does music. If you're ever, I know you're a long ways from there, but if you're ever taking your boat to Seychelles, let me know. I'll connect you with Mary. You'll have a great time. They'll love it. Astrology, just let it rip with them. You get a local connection in Seychelles, which I think would be very special. Because it's like a 5-star resort place in a way. So
I used to work with my partner in a place in an island in Seychelles
okay.
for a season, setting up a dive center. It's really beautiful there. Hopefully, we can sail there someday
Yeah,
on our way to India.
I've got a bit of a goal to go there. I've got 2 really good clients that they've been with me since I started doing astrology online, like forever. We've been talking. Really, really, yeah. So I've got a plan to go there eventually. They both said, like, just come, we'll take care of you. Everything will be fine. but he goes around, he plays a little bit of music around the island for these resorts kind of stuff. They're both also involved in like water and sewer construction, underground construction. There's a bit of a, you can see that alter ego going on there as well. Construction boss, and then like just happy-go-lucky. Yeah. He wrote a song for me, actually. I predicted his marriage to this woman. He was so happy. He wrote me a song, sent it to me. It's buried somewhere. I don't know what happened to it. So, yeah, I got a song written about me through him. So I had a good guy. You get Danielle Seal's books. I haven't read her. I don't know if you know her. She was like the romance queen, you could say, Danielle Steele, probably the most popular romance novelist. But I think there was a lot of alter ego stuff in her novels. I think that was a big part of the romance sort of thing, the beauty and the beast in a way kind of stuff. That also is another good metaphor for Punarvasu. And you might see that in relationships as well a little bit. Beauty and the beast sort of pair-offs of like that. Tim Pool's land. I knew him. When he was quite a bit older. He'd done a lot of things with his life, but he was in the Canadian Army for a long, long time. He worked with magic and tarot and all of that stuff. By the time I met him, though, he was starting to lose his mind a little bit. And that sort of alter ego sense, he kind of lost control of that to a certain degree. And he was living a little bit rough by the time I met him. Just couldn't sort of keep things together. In a sense, a little bit too high strung as well, like any little thing that touched him, and he was kind of going off in this anger. Interesting. Here we get like I'm looking at the names of the people I know. Jonathan L. and Daniel H. are both professional photographers. Really, really good photography. Jonathan was doing amazing black and white stuff from India. I don't know if you'd find his photography if you went online, but now actually, and speaking of Punarvasu, now what he does, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. He's building these sort of indoor aquaponics gardens. And so sprouting, he's like, it's all microgreen kind of stuff. And actually I talked to him about like, could you do this on a boat? And so you could have a garden on your boat, just the water getting pumped through, and at least you get those microgreens every day, a bit in a salad.
We even thought about it. We thought about doing microgreens and things like that when we were in Tenerife. I don't know if we could do it in a boat. I have to talk to my partner, but we have little plants here. I have some plants with us,
Okay, yeah.
trying to make them survive.
Yeah. So yeah, you get this kind of again, she's sprouting things. Aditya is that great mother kind of sprouting things. And then certainly on the Cancer side, that might even become stronger because the Cancer is the well, the moon rolls over all the vegetation. So that comes, this is of course still on the Gemini side, but you get that sort of sense of that. And so there's some sort of, anyway, some photography going around there. Eva Green, I think she was one of these actresses that was that Eva Green? I think she was one of these actresses got thrown off a boat. And it might have been like Cary Grant or someone like that was on the boat with her. And everybody's pretty sure that he did it, kind of thing. But at the end, they just closed the case and it was an accidental death. And oops, sorry. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Someone like Bill Cosby, he was like the great father figure in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, the Cosby Show, he was that great father, the great parental figure. And then we found out he had all these sex abuse stuff came out later on in his life. Martha Stewart, she's like the epitome of that. Like Martha Stewart, the good wife, but then the insider trading, off you go to jail, lady. So these sorts of things really, really come out. O.J. Simpson also, right? He got off on that, but everybody's like, no, I think he did it. So these sorts of things. David Duchovny, there's the last name on there I can't pronounce. He was the X-Files guy. So really working in that dark and light area, the strange, the unusual, trying to light up all the shadows in a sense like that. The guru of the conspiracy theorists, really. Oh, there we go. I got my signal of losing it, but oh geez, how's Carl Jung's chart? We have to stop and look at that, right? So I've mentioned Carl Jung as well. I've changed his chart fairly dramatically, I think, from what a lot of people are using. They've got his Saturn in the ascendant. And I don't know why I didn't agree with that. Well, because Saturn was too crusty in a lot of ways and sort of dirty, and really he's this figure of light in a lot of ways. You see that they got some videos of interviews of him when he's quite a bit older. Again, the camera and stuff wasn't coming out until then. He's just such this friendly, beautiful light shining from his eyes. It's such a grandfatherly sort of figure. And also, while there was that hiddenness in his relationships, he always sort of had a mistress around. These days, we give a lot of blame on him for that, but I get a sense from the chart that his wife was also involved in a lot of secret relationships, and so there might have been this sort of agreement between them. He was really, in some ways, the first sort of tantric sex guru, like, come out on retreat and let's we'll talk about your problems, but let's have a little fun and party and enjoy out at the lake house and just let go of your problems to a certain degree. And there was this reputation of being a bit of some orgies going on at his house and this sort of thing. And so, well, if there was orgies going on, his wife was also involved in that sort of thing, right? So he had some of these sorts of things go on. And part of that is because his 7th house lord is going into the 8th house from the 7th, right? So those relationships, there's a lot of transformation on the wife's side as well, and a lot of sort of secrets and hidden things going on there. But then very comfortable in any one-on-one sort of relationships, and maybe too comfortable, right? Because he started to date some of his clients, but sort of for the counseling thing, Jupiter's aspecting the 7th house, and so brings in, well, Jupiter in the ascendant, it makes him the guru figure, the advisor, also in Libra. So that's also the counselor, really. Jupiter and Libra, Jupiter in 7th. That's what I have. Jupiter in 7th gives me a lot of these sort of counseling type relationships. And the Punarvasu, then he gets in his 9th house. And so I think a lot of his higher wisdom and higher knowledge was exploring those dark sides, exploring the alter ego sort of stuff. The whole psychoanalytic method was going into the darkness. Let's see what you got in there. Let it out. And so that kind of thing. Both Mercury and Venus and Punarvasu there. So even a lot of who he was like Venus's rules his ascendant, and so his identity was really involved in that light and darkness side of him. Yeah, mythology, all that wellness coaching. Again, he was like the first. He's the guru of modern astrologers. He's the guru of modern coaches, the guru of modern psychology, all of that kind of stuff. Really, he was quite involved in. So I've looked at a chart a few times. I'm pretty sure this time is working. I don't know if you can see the time there, but I've got it at 1340 for a birth time. So again, I encourage you to look at that and, like Crowder says, prove me wrong, change my mind. With all of that kind of thing. Some fathers, again, I think when it comes to Aditya, she's like the great parent. And so you get the mother figures, but also the father figures as well, that are also involved in raising people and helping people grow and rise up. setting those foundations and planting those seeds. And so we get the father of civil engineering, again, planted all those seeds for great ideas and bridges and all of that sort of stuff. What do we got here? Pierre Ramond. Well, this is another great scientist, but I've got no time available. Which super string theory? And so again, it's not just those guitar strings. This is like hardcore theoretical stuff. Again, I'm not sure if his chart is correct. A lot of
I'm
the,
actually trying to rectify my father's chart because he doesn't have time of
okay,
of birth, but we have a lot of things in common. So I did put his chart in Punarvasu, like me. Like I actually rectified it to the same
Yeah.
degree as my ascendant, and I realized like a lot of our dasha, like I don't know, like not the dasha actually, it's like the transits. I think like on the same day, for example, we got a tooth pulled out exactly the same last week.
yeah,
And so I'm pretty sure my father has Punarvasu ascendant, and he is a theoretical physicist, specialist in like string theory, fission of atoms,
okay,
atomic nuclear energy, and he's a mathematician. So with
okay,
other things that you said, I'm pretty sure he is a Punarvasu ascendant.
okay, yeah, maybe. And maybe I'll check this guy to see if it's ascendant. This has Jupiter and Punarvasu, but I'll maybe check the ascendant. It can be tricky because that would put Ketu in his ninth house. Sometimes they don't care about theories, but sometimes it's so much they're numb from it. I've especially seen this in some students who have Ketu in the fourth house and they're doing some really hard studies. And I'm like, you just hate your school. It's just made you numb, all this foundational. They're like, oh, I can't stand it. I can't connect to it, but here I am doing it. So like that. So if you want to, someday we get some chance, if you want to talk about your father's chart somehow and go through that, and then I can, it's really, rectification's really nice when you got a couple people working on it, because the other, you get sort of, Punarvasu also, you get focused on a way that it's working and you don't see some other things outside. So you bring someone else in and I'll go, oh, well, if this is his chart, then
Yeah, that would be amazing if we could work together. I'm just trying to get some more details of his life because, like, the most important things I can think of is like marriage, a few accidents that he's had, the divorce, and he also is a gambler and drinks a lot. And he has, according to my chart now, Moon and Rahu in the 12th in Taurus, and Venus, Mercury, and Sun in the 8th in Capricorn. So I'm like, maybe this were Ketu in the 6th. So I'm like, I don't
is,
know, but it would be great if we can look
is
at
Mar
it.
is Mars also aspecting his moon?
Mars is in, where is his Mars? In the 4th house.
Okay, so it's not giving
2, 3,
aspect
4,
there,
5,
but
6,
yeah,
9. No.
brings a lot of heat in the home when Mars is there.
Yeah. Well, we can check it. It's really, really interesting. But because charts from Saudi Arabia, at least I think I got the date correct because they use the lunar Saudi calendar. And in those times, they didn't
Oh
even know
yeah,
when they were born. It's really crazy.
yeah. Well, there should be a calculator on there that'll do that
I
for
hope so.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank
Lord,
you. We'll chat about it.
yeah. Um, Lord Protector of the Commonwealth, Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector, like Dana, the Lord Protector of, I don't know, those below you. So Nostradamus also had this. It was probably also kind of protecting, some protection there. Deborah works with a lot of children. She does she's a teacher at the Waldorf School of Education. Yeah, so this kind of thing there as well. Mark Twain, I was just telling them here, someone grew up on the Mississippi. And so I was like, oh, Mark Twain was my first, really the first books I was reading was all the Mark Twain stuff. But he also had a strong alter ego. He had a sort of really two sides to him as well. Involved in, yeah, I don't know. But we think of children, all his books were about these kids, and it's really, in a sense, directed toward, they're kind of children's books, like young adult literature in a sense. So also kind of taking care of that way. We're gonna go really quick now because my thing is gonna die. Oh, let's look at Mark Twain's chart here quickly. There's Punarvasu. There's Jupiter. I think his wife also did a lot of help, really helped him get his books out there and get them to publishing and things like that. I think we get some of that connection there. He was working a lot with, and I never know, don't have the mark to tell me how correct this birth time is. But a lot of his money, like he got involved with typewriters or something, selling typewriters or cash registers or something like this for a while. He was kind of unsuccessful in a lot of that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, here's my father with his Punarvasu, Jupiter in 10th, and he was a horse trainer, kind of construction worker, horse trainer, working with the horses a lot that way. So yeah, in a way you could also say he lived at the racetrack. Was really like a second home for him in a way. He lived there, loved it, working with the horses, and then going gambling, the racetrack at night. Yeah, drinking also in the night and party, enjoy. So there's a little Jupiter and Punarvasu. Here we go. Venus and Punarvasu. How's my? Yeah, I gotta go. I'm 2% on my battery, and so I'm just gonna just shut her down now. So
Thank you so much.
thank you.
I'll read it. Thank you.
Indeed. Yeah. So I'll run and plug this thing in. Have a lovely day.
You too. Bye bye.